At 7:58 in the morning, I stared at a scheduled email loaded with enough evidence to burn my sister's perfect life to the ground. My phone buzzed against the counter, illuminating a single text that read, "You should have stayed quiet." I did not reply. I simply watched the clock tick down. Letting that email fly was the moment I finally dug up the secrets my family had buried for years. My name is Olivia Wallace, and at 34 years old, I was standing in the center of my kitchen, watching a digital timer count down the final 2 minutes of my sister's reputation. The morning light of Columbus, Ohio, was just beginning to filter through the blinds, casting long, pale stripes across the granite island. It was a Tuesday. The world outside was waking up to the rhythm of garbage trucks and school buses, unaware that inside number 412 Maple Street, a nuclear option was currently pending in my drafts folder. My laptop hummed softly on the counter. The screen was the brightest thing in the room. It displayed an email client, the compose window open, the recipient field populated with 5 different addresses. There was the fraud department of a major national bank. There was the internal compliance officer at Lakeview Crest Realty Partners. There was a blind carbon copy addressed to my personal attorney. I looked at the scheduled send time, 8 o'clock in the morning. It was currently 7:58. My hands were resting flat on the cold stone of the countertop. I looked down at them and noted, with a detached sort of fascination, that they were trembling. It was a fine, microscopic tremor, the kind you only get when your adrenaline has nowhere to go. I took a breath, held it, and forced my shoulders down. The subject line of the email was stark and devoid of emotion. It read simply, "Formal notice of identity theft and unauthorized financial activity. Case reference number 9924. Below the subject line, the body of the email was brief. I had not written a manifesto. I had not written a tear-stained letter about betrayal or sisterhood. I had written a timeline. Attached to the email were 4 PDF files. I knew the file names by heart because I had spent the last 48 hours compiling them, redacting them, and organizing them with the ruthless efficiency that made me excellent at my job as a compliance officer. Attachment: a promissory note with forged signature dated October 3rd. Attachment B: notarized affidavit of non-participation. Attachment C: IP. Address access log matching Lakeview Crest Realty, corporate server. Attachment D: credit inquiry timeline. The evidence was boring. That was the thing about white-collar crime, or in this case, familial crime. It was not blood on the floor. It was pixels on a screen. It was a digital timestamp showing that someone had logged into a loan portal using my social security number at 2 o'clock in the morning from a device named Kendall's MacBook Pro. The silence of the kitchen was shattered by a short, sharp buzz. My phone, lying face up next to the laptop, lit up. I did not want to look. I knew who it was. The timing was too precise for it to be anyone else. My family had a sixth sense for when I was about to step out of line. They could smell my defiance across town. I looked anyway. The name Kendall flashed on the screen. There was no emoji next to her name anymore. I had deleted the heart icon 3 days ago. The message was visible in the preview. It was short. "You should have stayed quiet." I stared at the words. Then a second bubble appeared, the typing indicator pulsing for a moment before the rest of the message delivered. "Don't do something you can't take back. Liv, you know how Mom gets." It was a masterpiece of a text message. In just 2 sentences, she managed to combine a threat with a guilt trip, invoking the matriarch of our family like a weaponized deity. It was not an apology. It was not a plea for mercy. It was an order. It was the command of a woman who had spent her entire life believing that the world, and specifically her younger sister, existed solely to cushion her falls. She knew. She knew I had found the paperwork. She knew I had traced the loan. She probably even knew I was awake right now. Kendall had always assumed that if she pressed hard enough, I would fold, because I always folded, because Olivia was the quiet one. Olivia was the one who understood. Olivia was the one who could handle the heavy lifting because she was sturdy and boring and reliable. I did not pick up the phone. I did not type a reply. I simply let the screen go dark again. Behind me, the coffee grinder roared to life. I flinched, the sound tearing through my nerves like a physical blow. "Sorry," Miles said, his voice thick with sleep. "Didn't mean to startle you." I turned around, leaning my lower back against the counter to hide the laptop screen. Miles was standing by the coffee maker, wearing his worn-out college t-shirt and flannel pajama pants. His hair was sticking up in 3 different directions. He looked soft and safe, and entirely too innocent for the war zone I was currently standing in. "It is okay," I said. My voice sounded thin, like paper. I cleared my throat and tried again. "It is okay. I was just focused." "Early start?" Miles asked. He pulled 2 mugs from the cabinet, the ceramic clinking gently. "You have that big audit meeting today, right, with the shipping logistics guys?" "Something like that," I said. He did not know. He did not know that 3 nights ago, I had received a credit alert that stopped my heart. He did not know that his wife currently owed $50,000 to a lender she had never met. He did not know that the audit I was conducting was not for a client, but for my own blood relatives. I had not told him because I was ashamed. I was ashamed that my family saw me as a resource to be harvested. I was ashamed that I had let it go on for this long, and I was terrified that if I told him, he would look at me with pity, or worse, he would try to fix it by writing a check we could not afford, just to make the pain stop. Miles was a fixer. He loved peace, but there would be no peace today. The smell of brewing coffee filled the air. Rich and earthy, it was usually my favorite smell in the world. Today, it made my stomach turn. I turned back to the laptop. 7:58 turned to 7:59. 1 minute left. My hand hovered over the trackpad. The cursor was sitting right over the button that said, "Cancel schedule." It would be so easy to click it. If I clicked cancel, the email would disappear into the drafts. I could call Kendall. We could work something out. She would cry. She would say she was drowning, that the real estate market was brutal, that she just needed a bridge loan to cover the staging costs for the big listing in Victorian Village. She would promise to pay me back. Mom would call and say how proud she was of us for sticking together. Gordon would make a joke about how money is just paper. We would have Sunday dinner. I would swallow my rage with the mashed potatoes. I would smile. I would stay the good daughter. I would stay the good sister. And I would carry a $50,000 debt that was not mine, risking my own credit score, my own security clearance at work, and the future Miles and I were trying to build. My mind flashed back to last Sunday, the catalyst. It was not the discovery of the loan that had pushed me to this edge. I had found the loan on Friday. I had spent Saturday in a state of shock, but it was Sunday dinner that pulled the pin on the grenade. We were at my parents' house in Upper Arlington. The house was perfect, as always. The landscaping was manicured to within an inch of its life. Mom had made roast beef. Kendall was there, looking radiant in a cream-colored cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my first car. She was laughing, telling a story about a client who wanted to install a gold-plated toilet. I sat there, feeling the weight of the secret in my pocket. I had printed out the credit report. It was folded into a tight square inside my jeans. I waited for a lull in the conversation. "Kendall," I had said, my voice shaking slightly. "I got a weird notification from Experian yesterday." The table went quiet, not a confused quiet, a tense, heavy quiet. Kendall did not look at me. She took a sip of her red wine, her eyes fixed on the centerpiece. Mom set down her fork. She looked at me with that expression she reserved for when I was being difficult. It was a look of exhausted patience. "Olivia," Mom said, "not here, not at dinner." "I have not even said what it is yet," I said. "We know what it is." Gordon grunted from the head of the table. He did not look at me either. He was cutting his meat with aggressive precision. My heart hammered against my ribs. "You know," Kendall finally looked up. Her eyes were wet, shimmering with that instant, weaponized vulnerability she could summon on command. "I told Mom and Gordon," she said softly. "I told them I was in a bind. I told them I borrowed your info, just for a placeholder. Liv, just until the commission check from the Riverside Close comes in. It is literally a matter of weeks. You forged my signature. I said. The words felt huge and foreign in my mouth. You took out a loan in my name. That is a felony. Kendall. Oh, stop it, Mom snapped. I recoiled as if she had slapped me. I looked at my mother, Carolyn Wallace, the woman who volunteered at the library, the woman who sent handwritten thank you notes. Stop it, I whispered. Stop using words like felony. Mom said. She reached over and covered Kendall's hand with hers. Kendall let out a small, trembling sniffle. Your sister is under an immense amount of pressure right now. Her image is her livelihood. If she cannot maintain her liquidity, she loses listings. If she loses listings, she loses everything. So I have to pay for it, I asked. Nobody is asking you to pay for it, Gordon said, waving his knife dismissively. She will pay it back. She just needed a co-signer with a steady W-2 income. You have that. You are the stable one. You can absorb the risk. Kendall cannot. You did not ask me to co-sign, I said, my voice rising. You stole my identity. Lower your voice, Mom hissed. She looked around the empty dining room as if the neighbors were hiding in the curtains. Then she looked at me, her eyes hard and cold. You are being incredibly selfish. Olivia, you have your little job. You have Miles. You have your safe little life. Your sister is out there fighting to make something of herself. You should have stayed quiet and let her fix it. But instead, you have to bring it up and ruin digestion. You should have stayed quiet. That was the sentence. That was the mantra of my childhood. Kendall was the firework. I was the bucket of water. Kendall was the protagonist. I was the narrator who was not supposed to interfere with the plot. I looked at them. I looked at my parents, who were looking at Kendall with concern, and at me with annoyance. I realized then that they did not see me. They saw a safety net. They saw a bank account. They saw a doormat that could breathe. I stood up. I did not finish my dinner. I walked out of the house while Mom called after me, telling me to stop being dramatic. That was 3 days ago. Back in the kitchen, the memory burned in my chest like heartburn. The clock on my laptop screen flickered. 7:59 and 30 seconds. I could hear Miles pouring the coffee. The liquid splashed into the mugs. It sounded like a waterfall in the quiet room. Hey, Miles said, his voice coming closer. You want toast? Or are we doing the oatmeal thing? I did not answer. My eyes were locked on the screen. The text from Kendall was still there on my phone. You should have stayed quiet. If I sent this email, there was no going back. The police would be involved. The bank would investigate. Kendall would lose her license. My parents would never forgive me. I would be the villain in the family history books forever. I would be the daughter who sent her sister to jail. But if I did not send it, I was agreeing with them. I was agreeing that my name, my credit, and my life were less important than Kendall's appearance of success. I was agreeing that I existed to be used. 7:59 and 50 seconds. My finger trembled on the trackpad. I moved the cursor away from the cancel button. I watched it hover over the grayed out send button, which was locked because of the schedule. I could still stop it. I could close the laptop. I could delete the draft. Liv, Miles asked. He was standing right behind me now. I could feel the heat radiating from him. He put a hand on my shoulder. You okay? You are shaking. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of coffee and the faint, chemical scent of floor cleaner. I looked at the time. 7:59 and 58 seconds. 7:59 and 59 seconds. The numbers blurred. I did not move my hand. I did not click cancel. I did not close the laptop. I just stood there, grounded in the center of my own kitchen, and waited for the world to end. The clock clicked. 8 o'clock. The email status on the screen flashed from scheduled to sending, and then, with a cheerful little whoosh sound that seemed entirely too happy for the destruction it carried, the message vanished. Sent. Almost instantly, the silence of the room was shattered. My phone began to ring. It was a shrill, demanding tone. The screen lit up with a photo of my sister, smiling a perfect, white-toothed smile. I looked at the phone. I looked at the sent folder. Miles leaned over my shoulder to look at the ringing phone. Kendall calling this early, is everything okay? I turned to my husband. For the first time in 3 days, my shoulders dropped. The shaking in my hands stopped. No, I said, my voice steady and clear. Everything is definitely not okay. I reached out and silenced the call. To understand why I let that email fly, you have to understand the geography of my family. In the Wallace household, love was not a resource you were born with. It was a currency you earned, and the exchange rate was fluctuating constantly based on how much you resembled my sister. We grew up in Columbus, Ohio, a city that feels like a big town, where reputation clings to you like the humidity in August. My mother, Carolyn, treated motherhood like a curatorial project. We were not just children, we were exhibits. And if we were exhibits, then Kendall was the permanent collection, the masterpiece under the spotlight, while I was the piece in storage that they brought out occasionally to fill a gap on the wall. Kendall was 2 years older than me, and by the time she was 16, she had already decided she was going to be a star. She was the kind of girl who did not just walk into a room. She announced herself. She had the blonde hair that caught the light, the laugh that made strangers want to be in on the joke, and an innate ability to make chaos look like charisma. I was different. I was the rough draft. I was the child who needed time. My mother used to tell her friends that Olivia was a late bloomer. She said it with a tight smile, the kind that suggested she was waiting for a flower that might turn out to be a weed. I did not sparkle. I studied. While Kendall was being elected homecoming queen and charming her way out of speeding tickets, I was in the library, organizing my notes with color-coded tabs. I worked at a bookstore to pay for my own gas. I applied to state universities because I knew the tuition would not cause a scene at the dinner table. I learned early on that silence was my safest position. In a house where Kendall occupied 100% of the available oxygen, trying to speak was just a way to suffocate. If I had an accomplishment, an A on a difficult history paper, a promotion at the bookstore, it was treated as a nice, quiet footnote. If Kendall had an accomplishment, a date with the quarterback, a callback for a local commercial, it was a headline event requiring champagne and phone calls to all the aunts. This dynamic did not end when we left the house. It calcified. Kendall became a real estate agent. It was the perfect career for her. She sold illusions. She sold the idea of a perfect life. Her Instagram feed was a curated gallery of open houses, sold signs, and selfies in her Mercedes. She bought a massive, 4-bedroom house in a new development called The Pines. It had vaulted ceilings and a kitchen island the size of a landing strip. She threw parties where everyone drank expensive wine and talked about interest rates. I went into compliance. I landed a job at North Harbor Compliance Group in downtown Columbus. It was not sexy. It was not something you could brag about at a cocktail party without people's eyes glazing over. But I loved it. I loved the structure of it. As a contract administrator, my world was governed by rules. There were terms and conditions. There were clear lines between right and wrong, between compliant and non-compliant. At North Harbor, nobody expected me to be charming. They expected me to be accurate. If a signature was missing, I flagged it. If a clause was contradictory, I fixed it. I found comfort in the black and white text because my personal life had always been a confusing shade of gray. My husband, Miles, understood this about me. He was a landscape architect, a man who worked with soil and roots, things that were real and tangible. When we met, he told me that he liked how I actually listened when people spoke, instead of just waiting for my turn to talk. He was the first person who made me feel like my quietness was a feature, not a bug. When Miles and I bought our house, we did not tell my family until the closing papers were signed. It was a small, 1950s ranch house in Clintonville. It had creaky wood floors, a drafty front window, and a backyard full of overgrown hostas. It was less than half the square footage of Kendall's palace. The kitchen barely had room for 2 people, and the bathroom tile was a hideous shade of pink that we affectionately called Pepto-Bismol chic, but it was ours. We paid for it with money we had saved, dollar by dollar. There was no help from Gordon, my stepfather, who always made a show of reaching for his wallet before sighing and putting it away. There were no loans from the bank of Mom. We moved in on a rainy Saturday in April. We ate pizza on the floor surrounded by boxes, and for the first time in my life, I felt the walls of a home hugging me back. I did not invite my parents or Kendall to see it for 3 months. Miles had asked me about it one night while we were stripping wallpaper in the hallway. He asked why we had not had a housewarming party. I remember looking at him, covered in drywall dust, and trying to explain the unexplainable. I told him that inviting my family into my home felt like inviting a panel of judges to an audition I was destined to fail. I did not want Gordon walking around tapping the walls and asking about insulation values. I did not want Mom looking at our secondhand sofa with that pitying smile. I did not want Kendall standing in my small kitchen, radiating success, making my life feel like a temporary stopover on the way to something better. I just want to be happy here first, I had said, before they tell me what is wrong with it. But you cannot hide forever. Eventually, they came over for a barbecue. It went exactly as I feared. Kendall parked her white SUV in front of our neighbor's driveway, blocking them in. She walked into our house wearing heels that cost more than our refrigerator. "It is so cozy," she said, dragging out the word cozy until it sounded like claustrophobic. She ran a finger along the mantel. "You know, with a little bit of money, you could knock down this wall, open it up. It feels a little tight in here. Do you not think—" "We like the walls," I said, handing her a drink. "We like having separate rooms. Well, to each their own," she said, flashing that brilliant smile. "I just love space. I need room to breathe." Gordon spent the afternoon asking Miles how much we paid for the place, shaking his head when he heard the number. "Market is inflated," he grumbled, chewing on a burger. "You bought at the top. Rookie mistake. Kendall got in before the surge. That girl has an instinct for value." Mom sat on the patio furniture we had bought from a garage sale, looking like she was afraid she might catch a disease from the cushion. "It is a charming starter home, Olivia," she said. "Good for just the two of you. But if you ever decide to have children, well, you will obviously need to upgrade. You cannot raise a family in a 2-bedroom. I looked at Miles. He was grilling corn, his back to them. I saw his shoulders stiffen. He knew how hard we had worked. He knew that this was not a starter home to us. It was the finish line of a marathon we had run in weighted boots. "We are happy, Mom," I said. "Of course you are," she said, patting my arm. "And that is what matters. Not everyone needs to be ambitious." That was the dagger, the word ambitious. In Carolyn Wallace's dictionary, ambition was not about working hard or being ethical. It was about visibility. It was about size. If it was not big, it did not count. I went inside to get more napkins and found Kendall in my bedroom. She was standing by the dresser, looking at a framed photo of Miles and me from our wedding. "You guys look cute," she said, not turning around. "Simple. I like it." "What are you doing in here?" I asked. "Just looking for the bathroom." She lied. The bathroom was down the hall, the door wide open. "Hey, Liv, quick question. How is your credit these days? You guys got a good rate on this place." I frowned. "We did fine." "Why?" "Just curious," she said, finally turning to look at me. Her eyes were darting around the room, assessing, calculating. "Real estate is tricky right now. Rates are climbing. I have some clients who are struggling to qualify. Just made me wonder how you guys managed it on your salaries." "We saved," I said coldly. "And we have good credit scores. I pay my bills. Kendall." "Right," she said, laughing a little too hard. "Miss Perfect Punctual. Always by the book." She walked past me, leaving a cloud of expensive floral perfume in her wake. Must be nice not to have any stress. I did not know it then, but she was not looking for the bathroom. She was looking for files. She was looking for opportunity. Weeks passed. The seasons turned. Then, the phone calls started changing. Usually, my mother only called me to talk about herself or to give me updates on Kendall's triumphs. Kendall just sold a $2 million estate. Kendall is going to Cabo. Kendall is dating a surgeon. But suddenly, Mom was interested in me. She called on a Tuesday night. "Olivia, honey, I was just thinking about you. How is the house?" "The house is fine, Mom," I said, putting my laptop away. "The roof held up during the storm." "That is good," she said. "And the mortgage. You guys are managing okay. No trouble with the payments." "We are fine," I said, suspicious. "Why?" "Oh, no reason," she said quickly. "Just motherly concern. You know, Gordon was saying that smaller houses like yours are actually holding their value quite well. You have equity sitting there." "I suppose," I said. "Have you ever thought about leveraging it?" she asked. The tone was casual, but I could hear the tension underneath. It sounded rehearsed. "Taking out a line of credit. Maybe doing those renovations Kendall suggested, opening up the floor plan." "We do not want to renovate, Mom. We do not have the money for it." "Well, that is just it," she said. "If you applied for a loan, you would have the money. And you know, sometimes families help each other with credit. If one person has a strong profile and another person just needs a little boost." I stopped walking. I stood in the middle of my living room, the phone pressed to my ear. "Mom," I said slowly, "are you asking me to take out a loan for Kendall?" No, of course not," she sputtered. "I'm just speaking theoretically. Kendall is having a momentary cash flow issue. The market is weird. Commissions are delayed. She has assets. Olivia, she is rich on paper. She just needs liquidity. Tell her to sell the Mercedes," I said. "Don't be spiteful," Mom snapped, her voice dropping the sweet facade instantly. "Your sister has an image to maintain. She cannot drive a Honda to meet a client. It would ruin her brand. You would not understand that. Working in a back office. I understand math," I said. "And I understand that if she needs money, she should go to a bank." "She cannot go to a bank right now," Mom whispered. "Her debt-to-income ratio is complicated. It is just a timing thing. She needs a bridge. Gordon and I have helped as much as we can, but our retirement funds are tied up. So you want me to do it. I want you to be a sister." Mom said, "I want you to stop hoarding your perfect little credit score and help the person who has always looked out for you." "Kendall has never looked out for me," I said. "She let you tag along with her friends in high school." Mom said, "She got you that discount on your wedding dress because she knew the owner. She loves you, Olivia, and she is scared. If she misses a payment on her business loans, it triggers a default. She could lose the brokerage license." "I cannot help her. Mom, I have my own mortgage. Miles and I are saving for a baby." There was a silence on the other end of the line, a long, cold silence. "I see," Mom said finally. Her voice was ice. "Well, I hope you enjoy your equity. Olivia, I hope it keeps you warm at night. It must be nice to be so perfect that you cannot lift a finger for your own flesh and blood." She hung up. I stood there, shaking. I felt that old, familiar guilt washing over me. The programming that had been installed in my brain since birth. The program that said I was selfish for having boundaries. The program that said Kendall's failures were actually my failures because I had not done enough to prevent them. I told Miles about the call. He was furious. He told me to block their numbers. He told me we were safe, that no was a complete sentence. And for a few weeks, I believed him. I thought that was the end of it. I thought my refusal had closed the door. I was naive. I was a compliance officer who lived by rules. And I made the fatal mistake of assuming my family played by the same ones. I assumed that when you said no, the other person stopped asking. I did not realize that to people like Kendall and my mother, no was not a wall. It was just a hurdle. And if I would not open the door for them, they would simply find a window I had left unlocked, or as I would soon discover, they would forge a key. It started with a piece of mail. It was a generic envelope from a lender I did not recognize. It looked like junk mail, the kind offering pre-approved credit cards. I almost threw it in the recycling bin, but the habit of my job, the North Harbor training, kicked in. I checked the addressee. It was addressed to me, Olivia Wallace. But the address was wrong. It was my name, but the street address was listed as 14 Oak View Lane, my parents' house. I opened it. Inside was a "Welcome to your new loan" packet. It congratulated me on securing a $50,000 home improvement loan. It listed the disbursement date as October 3rd. It listed the account number. And at the bottom of the welcome letter, it thanked me for choosing them to help finance the renovation of the property at the Pines. Kendall's house. I stood by the mailbox, the wind whipping my hair across my face. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. The air left my lungs. I was not just the invisible sister anymore. I was the co-signer, and nobody had bothered to ask me for the pen, to understand the anatomy of the betrayal. You have to look at the week leading up to the discovery. It was a masterclass in emotional extortion, a coordinated campaign that hit me from 3 different angles, all wrapped in the soft, suffocating cotton of family obligation. It began with the weaponization of language. In the Wallace Dictionary, the word help did not mean assistance. It meant tribute. 2 days after I had told my mother I would not leverage my home for Kendall, my phone rang while I was at my desk at North Harbor. It was 11 in the morning. I was reviewing a compliance checklist for a shipping vendor, my mind filled with regulations and safety protocols. I saw my mother's name on the screen and debated letting it go to voicemail, but the conditioning ran deep. I picked up. "Olivia," she said. Her voice was different this time. It was not the icy tone she had used when she hung up on me before. It was soft, trembling, pitched to a frequency that was designed to bypass my logic and hit my guilt centers directly. "I know you are working, and I am sorry to bother you. I just wanted to apologize." I stopped typing. "Apologize? For snapping at you," she said. "I am just so worried. Liv, you have no idea." She paused, waiting for me to fill the silence. I did not. "It is your sister," she continued, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "She is in a dark place. This market shift, it has really shaken her confidence. She is not sleeping. Gordon says he heard her crying in the guest room last night when she stayed over. She is just so fragile right now." "I am sorry she is stressed," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "It is not just stress," Mom said. "It is a crisis of identity. You know how hard she works. She just needs to get over this one hump. Just one little bridge to get her to the spring season. Once the spring listings hit, she will be flush again. She just needs a breathing room." Then came the pivot. It was so smooth, I almost admired it. "You are doing so much better than I thought, Olivia," she said. It sounded like a compliment, but it felt like an inspection. "You and Miles, you are so steady. You are the rock. I always knew you were the strong one. Kendall, she burns bright, but she burns out. You are the one who lasts." "Mom, where is this going?" "I was just thinking," she said, "if you could just lend your name, not even your money, just your credibility. Like a character reference, but financial, just to show the bank that she has backing. She would make all the payments. Gordon would oversee it personally. You would just be the silent partner, the hero in the shadows." "Mom, co-signing is not being a silent partner," I said, gripping my pen. "It is being fully liable for the debt. Why do you always have to make it sound so legal?" She sighed, the softness evaporating. "We are family. We are not a corporation. But fine, if you cannot find it in your heart to help your sister when she is drowning, that is your choice." She hung up. The guilt lingered in the air like stale smoke. That evening, the second wave hit. It was Gordon. My stepfather was a man who communicated primarily through grunts and lectures about the gold standard. He rarely texted. When he did, it was usually a demand. His message arrived at 7:30 while Miles and I were eating stir-fry. "Family is not a menu you order from only when you are hungry." The text read, "It is a table you sit at even when the food is burnt. Money comes and goes. Olivia, I have lost fortunes and made them back. But blood is permanent. You are treating a transaction like it is more important than a relationship. Disappointing." I read the text to Miles. He put down his chopsticks and rubbed his temples. "He is talking about money coming and going," Miles said, his voice tight. "But he never mentions the years you worked 2 jobs. He never mentions that your student loans are paid off because you paid them off. They act like our stability is an accident that we owe them a tax on." "They think I am selfish," I said. "They think you are an ATM that has forgotten its PIN." Miles corrected, but the final and most dangerous approach came from Kendall herself. It happened late that night. It was past 11 o'clock. We were in bed. The lights out. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was a series of texts from Kendall. "Hey." The first one read, "Sorry about Mom. She is intense." Then a second one, "I do not want you to feel pressured. I will figure it out. I always do." I felt a momentary pang of relief. Maybe she understood. Maybe she was finally backing off. I started to type a reply, telling her I loved her and hoped things worked out. But before I could hit send, the third text came. Random question. "Do you have that appraisal report from when you guys bought the house? The one with the comp values for the neighborhood?" I frowned. Why I typed back. "Just for market research." She replied instantly. "I am trying to price a listing a few streets over from you. The comps are weird. Just wanted to see what the bank valued your square footage at back then versus now. Also, who is your mortgage servicer? Did you guys go with Chase or Wells?" I stared at the screen in the dark. It felt wrong. It felt like a burglar asking for the blueprints of the vault just to admire the architecture. "I do not have the paperwork handy." I lied. "And we are with a local credit union." "Cool," she texted. "No worries. Just doing late-night homework. Love you. Liv." I put the phone down, but I could not sleep. The questions felt specific. They felt predatory. She was not asking about my life. She was asking about my data points. She was sizing up the asset. The next morning, I made my decision. I sent a message to the family group chat. I wanted it in writing. I wanted it clear. "I have thought about it." I wrote, "and I cannot co-sign or offer any financial backing right now. Miles and I have our own goals, and we need to keep our debt-to-income ratio clean. I hope you understand. Please do not ask again." I watched the screen. I saw the read receipts appear. Carolyn, Gordon, Kendall. Nobody typed. Nobody replied. An hour passed. Then 2. By noon, I checked the chat again. It was still silent, but then I noticed something else. My mother had left the group, Sunday dinner planning. Kendall had posted a photo on Instagram. It was a picture of her, Mom, and Gordon at a lunch spot downtown. They were holding up glasses of white wine. The caption read, "The people who always have my back. Circle of trust, real family." I felt a cold knot in my stomach. It was the silent treatment. It was the oldest punishment in the Wallace playbook. If you do not comply, you cease to exist. You are excised from the narrative until you crawl back with an apology and a checkbook. I went home that night feeling heavy. I felt like the bad guy. I felt like the selfish sister who chose a credit score over her flesh and blood. I sat on the back porch with Miles. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across our overgrown garden. "Did I do the wrong thing?" I asked. Miles looked at me. He took my hand. His palms were rough from working with stone all day. "Do you remember why we didn't invite them to the housewarming?" he asked. "Because I didn't want the criticism," I said. "Because you wanted peace," he said. Look at me. What do you want your life to feel like? Do you want it to feel like a performance for them, or do you want it to feel like this?" He gestured to the quiet yard, the fading light, the half-empty mugs of tea. "I want it to be peaceful," I whispered. "Then you stood your ground," he said. "Peace costs something. Liv, sometimes it costs their approval." I nodded. He was right. I felt a sense of resolution. I had drawn a boundary. They were angry, yes, but I was safe. I had said no, and that was the end of it. I was wrong. 2 days later, on a Friday, the notification arrived. It was not a text from my family. It was not a phone call. I was at work, clearing out my personal email inbox. I saw a subject line that looked like spam. "Thank you for choosing RapidFi Lending. Document verification complete." I hovered my mouse over the delete button. I assumed it was a phishing scam, but something made me pause. The preview text showed the first line of the email. Dear Olivia Wallace, your loan documents for the amount of $50,000 have been successfully processed. Your first payment is scheduled for November 1st. My heart stopped. It did not just skip a beat. It fully arrested in my chest. I opened the email. It was legitimate. It was a confirmation from a high-interest online lender, the kind that advertises on late-night television. It listed my full name. It listed my correct Social Security number, only the last 4 digits visible, but they were mine. And then I saw the attachment. Signed, promissory note, PDF. My hand shook so hard I could barely click the mouse. I opened the PDF. There, at the bottom of the page, was a digital signature. It said, Olivia Wallace. But next to it, in the field for Witness Notary, was a stamp from a notary public I knew. It was a woman who worked at the front desk of Lakeview Crest Realty, my sister's brokerage. I stared at the screen. The office sounds around me, the photocopier, the typing. The low hum of conversation faded into a buzzing static. I had said no. I had drawn the line. I had accepted the silence and the exclusion. But they had not accepted my no. They had simply bypassed it. I looked at the date on the document. It was dated for last Tuesday. The same night Kendall had texted me asking for the comps. She had not been doing homework. She had been filling out the application, and she needed to know exactly how much equity I had so she could borrow against it. She had stolen my name. She had stolen my credit, and she had done it while telling me she loved me. I sat back in my ergonomic office chair, the air conditioning blasting cold against my skin. But I was sweating. My phone on the desk was silent. There were no new messages from the family group chat. They were quiet. And now, I knew why. They were not ignoring me because they were angry. They were staying quiet because they were waiting for the check to clear. The notification from the credit monitoring app did not just arrive. It detonated in my pocket. It was 2:00 in the afternoon on a Friday. The office was winding down, the low hum of weekend anticipation filling the cubicles. But I was frozen in my chair, staring at a red arrow pointing downward on my phone screen. Your credit score has dropped by 42 points. I tapped the alert with a finger that felt numb. The screen refreshed, loading the details of the catastrophe. There, sitting at the top of my credit report like a fresh wound, was a new trade line, RapidFi Lending, open account, balance, $50,000, status current, date opened. October 3rd. I felt the blood drain from my face. It was one thing to see a welcome letter in the mail or a vague email notification, things that could be dismissed as errors or phishing attempts. It was another thing entirely to see it reported to the Bureau. This was real. This was a debt that the world now believed belonged to me. I did not scream. I did not run out of the room. I did what I had been trained to do as a compliance officer. I went into investigation mode. I grabbed a notepad and a pen. I put on my noise-canceling headphones, shutting out the chatter of my colleagues, and I dialed the number for RapidFi Lending's fraud department. The hold music was a distorted, tinny saxophone loop that played on repeat for 12 minutes. I stared at the clock on my computer screen, watching the seconds tick by, trying to control the shallow, panic-induced rhythm of my breathing. Finally, a voice clicked on the line. RapidFi Security. This is Marcus. Can I have your full name and case number? I do not have a case number, I said, my voice sounding frighteningly calm. My name is Olivia Wallace. I'm looking at a loan on my credit report that I did not authorize. I need to know how this happened. Okay, Ms. Wallace, Marcus said. I could hear the rhythmic clicking of his keyboard. I can certainly look into that, to verify your identity. Can you confirm your current home address? 412 Maple Street, I said. There was a pause. I am sorry, Marcus said. That does not match the address we have on file for this account. I closed my eyes. What address do you have? I cannot disclose that for security reasons, he said. Is it 14 Oak View Lane? I asked. My parents' address? There was another pause, longer this time. Yes, ma'am. That is the address on the application. I have not lived there in 7 years, I said. What about the email address? Is it olivia.wallace@northharbor.com? No, ma'am, Marcus said. The contact email is listed as lev.wallace.realestate@gmail.com. I wrote it down on my notepad. The ink bled slightly into the paper because I was pressing so hard. liv.wallace.realestate. It was a fake account. It was a digital mask created solely to intercept the communications so I would never see the warnings. Marcus, I said, this is identity theft. I need you to flag this account immediately. How was this loan even approved? Did you not call to verify employment? I work for a compliance firm. Nobody there received a call. One moment, Marcus said. Let me pull up the underwriting notes. The saxophone music returned. I sat there, tracing the letters of the fake email address over and over again until the paper tore. The level of premeditation was making me nauseous. This was not a drunk mistake. This was not a spur-of-the-moment panic. This was a calculated administrative assault. Creating a new email address took time. Filling out the application took time. Marcus came back on the line. Okay, I see here that employment was verified via a digital document submission. We received a letter of employment and proof of income from the applicant's employer. I work at North Harbor Compliance, I said. That is not who is listed here, Marcus said. The employer of record on the loan is Lakeview Crest Realty Partners. The room spun. Lakeview Crest. Kendall's brokerage. And the income? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. What income did they verify? The applicant submitted a commission statement and a base salary verification signed by the managing broker, Marcus said, stating an annual income of $120,000. I hung up. I did not say goodbye. I did not ask for a reference number. I just dropped the phone onto the desk as if it were burning hot. It was not just Kendall. Kendall was a real estate agent. She was an independent contractor. She could not verify her own employment. Someone at her office, someone with the authority to sign off on income statements, had helped her. They had created a fake personnel file for me. They had listed me as an employee of Lakeview Crest, fabricated a salary, and sent it to the lender. This was conspiracy. This was wire fraud. I unlocked my computer. My hands were shaking, but my movements were precise. I navigated to the Secretary of State's website. I pulled up the corporate filing for Lakeview Crest. Then I went to my personal files. I needed to see the timeline. I opened a spreadsheet. I started typing. October 1st. Credit inquiry initiated. October 2nd. Fake email address created estimated. October 3rd. Loan approved and disbursed. I looked at the date of the disbursement again. October 3rd. I checked my text message history. On October 3rd, Kendall had sent me a picture of a pair of shoes she wanted to buy. Do you think these are too much? She had asked. She had been shopping. She had been shopping with the money she had just stolen from my future. I dug deeper. I logged into my main email account and went to the trash folder, then the spam folder. I searched for anything containing the words credit or loan. I found it. A single, solitary notification from a credit bureau that had slipped through to my real email 2 weeks ago. New inquiry detected. I clicked on the details. The IP address of the device that had initiated the inquiry was listed in the metadata. I copied the IP address strings. I opened a geolocation tool. It was a public tool. Not perfectly precise, but accurate enough. The pin dropped on the map. It was not at my parents' house. It was not at Kendall's house. The pin dropped squarely on the commercial district in Upper Arlington, right on the block that housed the offices of Lakeview Crest Realty. I sat back. The pieces were locking together with a terrifying click. Kendall had done this from her work computer. She had used her office resources to fabricate my employment. She had used her mother's address to route the physical mail. She had used a burner email to catch the digital notifications. She had built a trap, and she had used my name as the bait. I printed everything. I printed the credit report. I printed the map with the IP address. I printed the notes from my conversation with Marcus. I organized them into a pile on my desk, the stack of paper growing thicker with every minute. I was just reaching for the stapler when my cell phone rang. The screen lit up. Kendall. I stared at it. I had not called her. I had not texted her. I had not told a soul what I was doing. But she knew. I realized then that if she had access to the loan account, she probably had alerts set up. She would know that I had called the bank. She would know that the account had been flagged for review. I picked up the phone. I did not say hello. I just held it to my ear and breathed. Liv. Kendall's voice was high, breathless. It sounded like she was walking fast. Or maybe running. Hey, are you there? I am here, I said. Okay, good, she said. She let out a nervous laugh. So, listen, I just got a weird notification on my end about the financing thing. Did you speak to someone today? The financing thing, I repeated. Is that what we are calling it? Liv, please, she said. Her voice dropped, losing the feigned cheerfulness. I can explain. It is not what it looks like. It was a placeholder. I told you. I just needed a bridge. You forged my signature, Kendall. I didn't forge it, she said quickly. I authorized it on your behalf. Because I knew you would want to help if you understood the full picture. You were just being stubborn because you were scared. I took the fear out of the equation for you. You took the choice out of the equation, I said. And you involved your brokerage. You falsified employment records. Do you have any idea what you have done? Stop using that compliance voice, she snapped. You sound like a robot. This is real life. Olivia, people bend rules. That is how business works. I'm going to pay it back. I have the commission check coming in 2 weeks. I was going to pay it off in full before you even knew it existed. It was supposed to be seamless. But I do know, I said. And the bank knows. I just got off the phone with them. There was a silence on the other end, a heavy, terrified silence. What did you tell them? She whispered. I told them I didn't sign it. Olivia, she said, you have to call them back. You have to tell them it was a misunderstanding. You have to tell them you forgot you signed it. Tell them you were confused. You want me to lie to a federal bank regulator? I want you to save my life, she screamed. The sound distorted in the speaker. If they investigate this, I lose my license. I lose the house. I lose everything. Do you understand? You will destroy me. I didn't do this, I said. You did. We are sisters, she cried. Doesn't that mean anything to you? I changed your diapers. Olivia, I walked you to the bus stop. You owe me. I owe you $50,000, I asked. It is just money, she yelled. It is numbers on a screen. Why do you care more about numbers than you care about me? I looked at the stack of papers on my desk, the evidence of her betrayal. It wasn't just numbers, it was the contempt, the absolute certainty she possessed that my life was hers to spend. I am not calling them back, I said. Wait, she said. Her voice shifted again. It became desperate, pleading. Wait. Just don't do anything else yet. Please, let me see you. Let me explain the plan. I have a plan to fix it. I just need you to hear me out. Face to face. Please, Liv. For Mom's sake. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to hang up and call the police right then, but another part of me, the part that had spent 34 years seeking her approval, faltered. When? I asked. Tonight, she said. Meet me at that coffee shop on 3rd, the one near your office, 5:30. I will bring the paperwork. I will show you how I'm going to pay it back. Just give me 10 minutes. I looked at the clock. It was 4:45. Fine, I said. 5:30? And Olivia, she said. The sweetness was back, but it was brittle now, sharp at the edges. What? Don't tell Miles, she said. And don't tell anyone else. If this gets out, if Mom finds out, it will kill her. You know her heart isn't strong. Keep this between us until we fix it. Okay. I will see you at 5:30, I said. I hung up. I sat there for a moment in the silence of my office. Don't tell anyone. It was the classic abuser's request. Isolate the victim, control the narrative, make the silence a condition of the relationship. I looked at the stack of evidence. I picked up the papers and slid them into my briefcase. I was going to meet her. I was going to hear her out, but I was not going to stay quiet. I opened my email one last time. I drafted a new message. I did not send it. I just saved it. Subject meeting notes. October 20th. I was not going to a family reunion. I was going to a deposition, and I was bringing the receipts. The coffee shop Kendall had chosen was called The Third Wave. It was one of those places where the barista looked like a runway model and a cup of black coffee cost $6. It was all exposed brick, reclaimed wood, and the aggressive hum of people pretending to write screenplays. I arrived at 5:25. I sat at a small, wobbly table in the corner, my back to the wall. I wanted to see her coming. I kept my briefcase on my lap, my hands folded over the leather. I felt less like a sister waiting for a sibling and more like a witness waiting to be cross-examined. Kendall walked in at 5:32, even in the midst of a felony. She looked immaculate. She was wearing a camel-colored trench coat belted tightly at the waist, black pants, and heels that clicked sharply against the concrete floor. Her hair was blown out in soft, expensive waves, but as she got closer, I saw the cracks in the porcelain. Her foundation was a shade too heavy, trying to cover the dark circles under her eyes. Her hands, usually so graceful, were clenching her phone with a grip that turned her knuckles white. She saw me and flashed a smile that didn't reach her eyes. It was a muscle memory smile, a reflex. "Liv," she exclaimed, breathless, as if she had just run into me by happy accident. Oh my God! Traffic was a nightmare on High Street. You have no idea. She sat down opposite me, placing her Chanel bag on the table between us. It was a barricade. "I didn't order yet," she said, glancing at the counter. "Do you want anything?" "My treat? I know you love their matcha." "I don't want matcha." "Kendall," I said. My voice was low, cutting under the noise of the milk steamer. "I want to know why there is a $50,000 loan in my name." Kendall flinched. She looked around quickly to see if anyone nearby was listening. She leaned in, lowering her voice to a harsh whisper. "Okay, wow, skip the pleasantries then," she said. She adjusted the cuff of her coat. "Look, Liv, I know you are upset, and you have a right to be surprised. I get that. But you are reacting to the raw data without knowing the context. You are looking at the math, not the human being." "The math says you committed fraud," I said. "It is not fraud," she hissed. "It is creative financing. It is a bridge. I told you. The market is weird right now. I have 3 closings scheduled for November, big ones, but the commission checks are lagging because of bank processing times. I just needed a cash injection to cover the staging costs for the Victorian Village house and, well, a few personal overheads. So you used my social security number." "I borrowed your creditworthiness," she corrected. She looked at me with wide, pleading eyes, the same look she used to give our father when she wanted the car keys. "You weren't using it, Liv. It was just sitting there. You and Miles are so safe. You have your little house. You have your steady paychecks. I knew you wouldn't mind helping me out if you knew I was in a jam. I just didn't want to worry you with the details." "You forged my signature," I repeated. I was stuck on that fact. It was the anchor keeping me from drifting into her reality. "I signed for you as your proxy," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "Like a power of attorney. It is a gray area." "It is not a gray area," I said. "I work in compliance. Kendall, it is a crime." Kendall sighed, a long, dramatic exhalation of air. She reached across the table and tried to touch my hand. I pulled back. "You are so rigid," she said, shaking her head. "You always have been, even when we were kids. Remember when we played house? You always wanted to be the one who organized the pantry. You never wanted to be the princess. I am just trying to explain that I did this for us, for the family. If my business goes under, Mom and Gordon have to bail me out, and that hurts their retirement. By doing this, I protected them. I was being responsible." "By stealing from me." "By utilizing a dormant asset," she said, her voice rising slightly. "God, Olivia, why do you have to make everything so ugly? I'm trying to build an empire here. Do you think Elon Musk asked for permission for every little thing? Do you think the big guys play by every single rule? I am an entrepreneur. I take risks. You took a risk with my life, I said. Not yours. She stared at me for a moment, her jaw tight. Then, she reached into her bag. Fine, she said. You want to be formal? Let's be formal. She pulled out a crisp, white envelope and slid it across the table. I stared at it. What is this? It is the solution, she said. Since you are so worried about the paperwork not being perfect. I opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper. It was typed on Lakeview Crest Realty letterhead. I read the title, Retroactive Authorization of Financial Representation. I scanned the text. It was a legal document stating that I, Olivia Wallace, had granted Kendall Wallace full permission to act as my financial agent starting on September 30th. It stated that I acknowledged the loan application and authorized the use of my digital signature. It was a confession disguised as a contract. If I signed this, the fraud would disappear. The bank would look at it and say, "Oh, she gave permission. It is not identity theft. It is just a co-signed loan." But it also meant that I was now legally liable. If I signed this, I accepted the debt, I accepted the $50,000, and I accepted that if she defaulted, they would come for my house. What is this? I asked, looking up at her. It is an indemnity waiver, she said smoothly. Gordon's lawyer drafted it. It just says that you are okay with what happened. You sign this, I send it to the bank, and the fraud investigation stops. They unfreeze the account, I get the money, I pay off the loan in 3 months, and nobody gets hurt. It cleans up the mess. Gordon's lawyer drafted this, I asked. She nodded. Gordon knows. Mom knows. We all talked about it this morning. The air in the coffee shop seemed to vanish. I felt like I was underwater. Mom knows, I whispered. Of course she knows, Kendall said. She was the one who suggested it. She said, Olivia is a good girl. She is reasonable. She won't want to see her sister in handcuffs. Just get her to sign a paper that makes it legal. I felt a sharp, physical pain in my chest. It wasn't a heart attack. It was the sound of my childhood finally breaking into pieces. My mother knew. She hadn't just covered for Kendall. She had engineered the cover-up. She had bet on my compliance. She had bet on the fact that I was the quiet one, the one who would swallow poison rather than spit it out at the dinner table. Mom said you wouldn't make this hard, Kendall continued, her voice softening, thinking she had won. She said you understand how much pressure I'm under. She said, Olivia doesn't need the credit right now. Kendall does. I looked at the paper. I looked at the line where my signature was supposed to go. It was not a waiver. It was a leash. If I signed this, I would never be free of them. Every time Kendall needed money, she would know she could do this again. Every time she wanted to leverage me, she would know I would fold. I would be buying my family's love with my financial security. No, I said. Kendall blinked. She looked like I had spoken in a foreign language. What? I pushed the paper back across the table. No, I am not signing that. Kendall laughed. A sharp, incredulous sound. Don't be stupid, Olivia. If you don't sign it, the bank continues the investigation. Do you know what happens then? They file a police report. It becomes a criminal matter. I know, I said. You would send me to jail? She asked. Her voice was loud now. People at the nearby tables turned to look. She didn't care. She leaned over the table, her face twisting into something ugly and unrecognizable. You would put your own sister in a cell over money. Not over money, I said. Over respect, over the fact that you looked me in the eye 3 days ago and lied. Over the fact that you think my life is just fuel for yours. You are jealous, she spat. The veneer of the successful realtor was gone. This was the high school bully. You have always been jealous. You sit in your tiny house with your boring husband and your boring job. And you hate that I am special. You hate that Mom loves me more. The words hung in the air. You hate that Mom loves me more. She had said the quiet part out loud. Maybe she does, I said, surprisingly calm. But I am not paying $50,000 for her to love me. I stood up. I picked up my briefcase. Kendall stood up too. She grabbed my arm. Her grip was painful. "Listen to me," she hissed, her face inches from mine. "If you walk out of here and you let that investigation proceed, you are done. You understand? You are dead to us. Mom will never speak to you again. Gordon will write you out of the will. You will be alone. Olivia. You will have your justice, but you will have nobody to share it with." "I have Miles," I said. "Miles," she sneered. "Miles is weak. He will leave you once he realizes you destroyed your own family. Nobody likes a traitor. Liv." I looked down at her hand on my arm. "Let go of me." "Kendall." She held on for a second longer, her nails digging into my coat. Then she shoved me away. "You are making a mistake," she said. "You are making a huge mistake. You think you are the victim here. Wait until I tell people what really happened. Wait until I tell them how you begged me to take out this loan because you were drowning in debt and I was just trying to help you. Who are they going to believe, the successful realtor or the mousy little compliance officer?" "That is a lie," I said. "It is a story," she said, smoothing her hair. She was composing herself again, putting the mask back on. "And I tell better stories than you do." I turned and walked out. I walked out into the cool October evening. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I felt sick. I felt terrified. But mostly, I felt awake. I drove home in silence. When I walked through the door, Miles was waiting in the kitchen. He took one look at my face and pulled me into his arms. I didn't cry. I was past crying. I felt cold and hard, like steel that had been tempered in fire. "She wanted me to sign a retroactive authorization," I told him later, as we sat on the couch. "Mom knew. Mom told her to do it." Miles held my hand. He didn't say, "I told you so." He just squeezed my fingers. "So what do we do?" "We finish it," I said. At 10:45 that night, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Kendall. "You should have stayed quiet." Then a second message. "I am posting a statement tomorrow." About how my identity was compromised by a family member I trusted. "I am going to control this narrative. Olivia, unless you fix this by morning, everyone in Columbus is going to know what an unstable, jealous sister you are." She was threatening to frame me for her own crime. She was going to use her social media platform, her influence, her perfect reputation to paint me as the villain. I looked at the phone. She thought the threat would break me. She thought I would panic and call her, begging to sign the paper. She was wrong. I stood up and walked to the kitchen island. I opened my laptop. The screen glowed blue in the dark room. I was not going to argue with her on Instagram. I was not going to fight a rumor war on Facebook. I was going to fight where I lived, in the documentation, in the timestamps, in the undeniable, black and white reality of the law. I opened a new email draft. I typed the recipient, Fraud Investigations Unit, National Bank. I typed the CC Compliance Officer, Lakeview Crest Realty Partners. I looked at the blank white space of the body. I wasn't writing this out of revenge. Revenge is hot and messy. This was cold. This was survival. If I didn't send this email, she would destroy my reputation to save her own. She would burn my life down to keep herself warm. I began to type, "To whom it may concern." Attached. Please find a sworn affidavit regarding the unauthorized use of my personal identification. I typed for an hour. I attached the IP logs. I attached the credit report. And then, I attached a transcript of the conversation I had recorded on my phone in the coffee shop. Because I was a compliance officer, and in Ohio, only one party needs to consent to a recording. I finished the email. I looked at the clock. It was almost midnight. I didn't want to send it yet. I wanted to give myself one night of sleep, one last night to mourn the family I was about to lose. I moved the cursor to the Schedule Send button. I set the time. Tomorrow, 8:00 a.m. I clicked Schedule. The laptop hummed. The trap was set. Not a trap I had built, but a trap she had walked into. All I had to do was let the door close. The invitation arrived not as a request, but as a summons disguised in calligraphy. It was a text from my mother. But the tone was so formal, it might as well have been embossed on heavy cardstock. Dinner, 7:30, the Gilded Oak, just family. We need to heal this. Just family meant Miles was not invited. They wanted me alone. They wanted the version of Olivia they had trained for 3 decades, the one without her husband's protective glare, the one who sat quietly at the kids' table while the adults discussed the important business of being perfect. I drove there in my sensible sedan, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. The Gilded Oak was the kind of restaurant where the menus did not list prices, and the waiters whispered as if they were sharing state secrets. It was all dark mahogany, velvet banquettes, and the hushed, clinking sound of expensive silverware hitting china. It was the perfect setting for a Wallace family crisis, beautiful on the surface, rot underneath. I walked in at 7:25. They were already seated at a round corner table, a prime spot that offered privacy while still allowing them to be seen by the right people. Kendall looked like a tragedy painted by a master. She wore a black dress that was modest by her standards, her hair pulled back in a severe, simple bun. She looked smaller, frailer. It was a performance. I knew it. And yet, seeing her look so diminished made a traitorous pang of sympathy strike my chest. Mom and Gordon flanked her like bodyguards. "Olivia," Mom said, half rising to offer me a cheek to kiss. She smelled of Chanel No. 5 and nervous sweat. "Thank you for coming. Thank you for being the bigger person." I sat down. I did not unfold my napkin. I kept my hands on the table, visible. "I am here to listen," I said. "That is all. That is all we ask," Gordon grunted. He poured a glass of red wine from a bottle that probably cost more than my first student loan payment. He pushed the glass toward me. "Drink. You look like you are about to conduct an audit." "I am," I thought. But out loud, I said nothing. Kendall didn't look at me. She was staring into her water glass, swirling the ice cubes with a straw. "I know you are angry," she began. Her voice was a tremulous whisper, perfectly pitched to make anyone eavesdropping think I was the villain. "I know I messed up. Liv, I know the optics are bad." "The optics?" I asked. "You mean the felony?" "Please," Mom interjected, placing a hand on my forearm. Her grip was tight. "Let's not use legal terms tonight. We are not in a courtroom. We are breaking bread." "I am just tired." "Liv," Kendall continued, finally looking up. Her eyes were rimmed with red. "You have no idea what the pressure is like. Everyone expects me to be this golden girl. Everyone expects the sales records, the car, the clothes. If I slip, even for a second, the sharks in this town will eat me alive. I was just trying to keep my head above water. I didn't want to hurt you. I just wanted to survive." She was doing it again. She was making her ambition sound like a terminal illness. She was framing her greed as a survival instinct. "You could have asked me," I said. "You could have asked for a loan. You didn't have to steal my identity." "I was ashamed," Kendall cried out, a little too loudly. A waiter nearby paused, then looked away. "I couldn't admit to my little sister that I was failing." "Can't you understand that? Can't you understand how humiliating it is to be the big sister? The one who is supposed to have it all, and have to beg?" "So instead of begging, you took," I said. "I borrowed," she corrected, "and I'm going to pay it back. That is why we are here." The waiter arrived to take our order. We ordered steaks we wouldn't eat and sides we wouldn't taste. As soon as he left, the atmosphere shifted. The emotional preamble was over. Now came the business. Mom leaned forward. She had that look on her face, the one she used when she was organizing a charity gala and things were going wrong. It was the look of a general marshaling her troops. "Olivia," she said softly, "we have a solution. Gordon and I have looked at the numbers. Kendall has 3 closings pending. The money is there. It is just delayed. All we need to do is bridge the gap." "I am not giving her $50,000. Mom, I don't have it." "We know that," Mom said. "We aren't asking for money. We are asking for time. We are asking for grace." She reached into her purse and pulled out the same document Kendall had tried to give me at the coffee shop, the retroactive authorization. "If you sign this," Mom said, sliding it across the tablecloth. It becomes a family loan. The bank investigation stops. The police are never called. Kendall pays off the balance by January 1st, plus interest. We will even pay you a convenience fee, $5,000 for your trouble. They were trying to bribe me. They were trying to buy my credit score for $5,000. And if I don't sign it, I asked, then you destroy your sister, Gordon said. He cut into his bread roll with unnecessary violence. Let's call a spade a spade. Olivia, if you let that fraud report stand, Kendall loses her license. She is blacklisted. She goes to court. Is that what you want? Do you want to be the one who sent your sister to prison over a paperwork error? It wasn't an error, Gordon, I said. It was deliberate. It was a procedure, Gordon snapped. Christ, you are stubborn. It is just forms. It is just boxes on a screen. And then, he said it, the slip, the loose thread that unraveled the whole sweater. When I was helping her fill out the application, Gordon grumbled, taking a large gulp of wine. I told her to put the income under consulting so it wouldn't trigger a W-2 check, but the system was glitchy. We had to use the employment letter instead. It was just a workaround. Olivia, everyone does it. The table went silent. I looked at Gordon. Then I looked at Kendall. Kendall closed her eyes. You helped her, I asked, my voice barely a whisper. You were there when she filled it out. Gordon froze. He realized, too late, what he had admitted. I advised her, he stammered, on the financial structure. I didn't click the buttons. You told her how to bypass the income verification, I said. You knew she was using my name. I turned to Mom. She wasn't surprised. She didn't look shocked that her husband had assisted in identity theft against her daughter. She just looked annoyed that he had admitted it. It doesn't matter who clicked what, Mom said sharply. The point is, we were trying to solve a problem, and now you are the only thing standing in the way of the solution. I felt a cold clarity wash over me. This wasn't just Kendall being reckless. This was a conspiracy. My stepfather, a man who prided himself on law and order, had sat at a computer screen and coached my sister on how to defraud a lender using my credentials. My mother had blessed it. They hadn't invited me here to apologize. They had invited me here to make me an accomplice. You don't want to fix the debt, I said slowly. You want to fix the evidence. You want me to sign this paper so that if the bank ever asks, you can produce it and say I was in on it from the beginning. We are protecting the family name, Mom hissed. Do you have any idea how hard we have worked? Do you have any idea what people will say if this comes out? I don't care what people say. I said, I care that you stole from me. Kendall, who had been silent, suddenly slammed her hand on the table. The silverware jumped. Oh, stop being such a martyr, she spat. Her face was twisted, ugly with entitlement. You act like we took your kidney. It is a credit line. Olivia, you aren't even using it. You sit in that tiny house with your tiny life, hoarding your good credit like it makes you better than us. It is selfish. That is what it is. It is selfish. Selfish? I asked. Yes, she said. I am out here taking risks. I am trying to build something. And you? You just want to be safe. You have your boring husband and your boring job and your quiet little weekends. You have nothing to lose. Olivia, I have everything to lose. So why can't you just take the hit? Why can't you just be quiet and let us fix it? Because it is my name, I said. It is our name, she screamed. It is Wallace, you don't own it. The restaurant had gone quiet. People were staring. A manager was hovering near the entrance of the dining room, looking concerned. I looked at them. My mother, with her desperate eyes, my stepfather, with his arrogant sneer, my sister, who truly believed that my existence was merely a support beam for her own. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I felt a strange sense of peace. The peace of knowing exactly where you stand, even if you are standing on a trap door. I have a question, I said. My voice was calm, steady, cutting through the tension like a scalpel. They looked at me, waiting. If I sign this paper, I said, And I take legal responsibility for this debt. Who guarantees it gets paid if Kendall spends the commission check on something else, a new car, a trip, another investment? Who pays the $50,000? I told you I will pay it, Kendall said. And if you don't? I asked. Gordon, will you write me a check right now for the full amount, to be held in escrow? Gordon scoffed. Don't be ridiculous. I don't have that kind of liquid cash sitting around. It is tied up. So nobody guarantees it, I said. I take the risk. Again, I took a sip of water. And here is my second question, I said. If I don't sign it, what are you going to do? The silence that followed was heavy, pregnant with threat. Kendall smiled. It was not a nice smile. If you don't sign it, she said softly, leaning in, then I will tell everyone that you came to me. I will tell them you needed money for Miles. Maybe he has a gambling problem. Maybe you are having an affair. I will tell them you begged me to use my connections to get you a loan because your credit was maxed out. And now you are getting cold feet and trying to blame me. I will ruin you. Liv, I will make sure you never work in compliance again. Who hires a compliance officer who commits loan fraud? It is your word against mine, I said. Exactly, Kendall said. And look at us. Look at this table. Who do people believe, the successful, the charismatic realtor with the perfect family, or the quiet, mousy sister who nobody really knows? She sat back, looking triumphant. Sign the paper. Olivia, Mom said. Don't make us do this to you. I looked at the document. Retroactive authorization. It was a suicide note for my integrity. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was 8:45 in the evening. I need to think about it, I said. There is no time to think, Gordon said. The bank needs an answer. I will give you my answer in the morning, I said. At 8 o'clock, I stood up. Sit down, Mom ordered. We haven't eaten. I am not hungry, I said. If you walk out that door, Kendall said, you are starting a war. I looked down at her. For the first time in my life, I didn't see a star. I didn't see a queen. I saw a scared, pathetic woman who had to steal her little sister's shadow just to feel tall. I am not starting a war. Kendall, I said, I am just ending the occupation. I turned and walked away. I walked past the manager, past the hostess stand, and out into the cool night air. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. They were shaking from the adrenaline of realization. They had shown me their hand. They had revealed everything. They weren't just asking for help. They were holding a gun to my head. I got into my car and locked the doors. I sat there for a moment in the dark parking lot. I thought about the email sitting in my drafts folder. The one scheduled for 8 o'clock in the morning. I had hesitated before. I had wondered if I was being too harsh. I had wondered if there was another way. But Gordon's slip had sealed it. I told her to put the income under consulting, and Kendall's threat had signed the warrant. I will make sure you never work in compliance again. They were willing to destroy my actual life to save their fake one. I started the car. I wasn't going to cancel the email. I was going to add an attachment. I drove home, the streetlights blurring past me. I walked into my house, my real house, the one I paid for. Miles was waiting. He looked at my face and didn't say a word. He just handed me a glass of wine. Did they apologize? He asked. No, I said. They negotiated. I sat down at my kitchen counter. I opened my laptop. I opened the scheduled email. I typed a new paragraph. Furthermore, during a meeting on the evening of October 20th, Mr. Gordon Wallace admitted to advising the applicant on how to circumvent income verification protocols, establishing a conspiracy to defraud. I didn't have a recording of the dinner, but I didn't need one. The investigation would find the digital footprints. Gordon was arrogant. He would have left a trail. I looked at the time. The email was set for 8 o'clock. It was the only weapon I had, and in less than 12 hours, I was going to pull the trigger. The morning after the dinner at the Gilded Oak, I did not go to the office. I took a personal day. But it was not for rest. It was for strategy. I sat in the sterile, gray conference room of a legal consultancy firm on the outskirts of Columbus. Across from me sat distinct professional detachment. I did not want a hug. I did not want sympathy. I wanted the cold, hard calculus of the law. I needed someone to look at the mess my sister had made and tell me exactly how to clean it up without getting blood on my own hands. The consultant, a woman named Sarah who specialized in financial fraud resolution, pushed the stack of papers back toward me. Her face was grim. "It is binary. Olivia," she said. Her voice was flat, devoid of the emotional manipulation I had endured the night before. "There is no middle ground here. You cannot sort of fix this. You cannot pay it off quietly and keep your record clean." "Explain," I said. "If you make a single payment," she said, tapping the table with a pen, "you are acknowledging the debt. In the eyes of the credit bureaus and the law, that payment is a signature. It is an admission that the loan belongs to you. Once you do that, you lose the right to claim fraud later. You own the debt. You own the liability. And if your sister stops paying, which, given her history, is a statistical probability, you are on the hook for the full $50,000, plus interest, plus the damage to your credit score, which will take 7 to 10 years to recover." "And if I report it?" I asked. "Then you are a victim of a crime," she said. "The bank absorbs the loss. They go after the perpetrator to recover their funds. They will file a police report because federal banking regulations require them to do so for amounts this size. It creates a criminal record for the applicant." I looked at the papers. "So, I either sacrifice my financial future, or I sacrifice my sister?" Sarah looked at me over the rim of her glasses. "You are looking at it wrong. You are not sacrificing her. She already jumped off the cliff. Olivia, the only question is whether you are going to let her drag you down with her." I drove home with that sentence ringing in my ears. She already jumped off the cliff. When I got back to my house, the silence was absolute. Miles was at work. The neighborhood was quiet. I made a pot of coffee, black, and sat down at the dining table with the employment file Kendall had submitted to the lender. I needed to be sure. Before I pushed the button that would detonate my family, I needed to review the evidence one last time with the eyes of a compliance officer, not a sister. I spread the documents out. I looked at the loan application. I looked at the income verification. And then, I saw it. In my initial panic, I had missed the letterhead. I had focused so much on the fake salary numbers that I hadn't looked at the stationery. The employment verification letter, the one stating that I, Olivia Wallace, was a senior consultant, earning $120,000 a year, was printed on official corporate letterhead, Lakeview Crest Realty Partners. It had the logo, it had the corporate address, it had the registration number of the brokerage. I felt a chill go down my spine that had nothing to do with the temperature of the room. This changed everything. Until this moment, I had thought this was a personal crime. I thought it was just Kendall acting alone, maybe with some clumsy help from Gordon. But this was corporate malfeasance. Kendall had used her company's official assets to facilitate fraud. She had used their letterhead to verify false information for a federal loan. I knew enough about the real estate world to know what this meant. Lakeview Crest Realty Partners was a large firm. They had compliance protocols. They had insurance policies. They had a legal obligation to prevent their agents from using the company name to commit crimes. If the lender found out that a Lakeview agent had used Lakeview letterhead to forge a loan, the lender could sue the brokerage. The brokerage could lose its license. The blowback would be nuclear. Kendall hadn't just exposed herself. She had exposed her entire firm. And Gordon, he had said he advised her. If he had advised her to use that letterhead, he was part of a conspiracy to defraud a corporate entity. I sat back in my chair. My hands were trembling, not from fear, but from the sheer scale of their stupidity. They had built a bomb in the living room and were surprised that I was afraid of the ticking. I opened my laptop. It was time. I did not open a word processor to write a letter. I opened my email client. I needed this to be immediate. I needed it to be time-stamped. I typed the subject line. I kept it sterile. I kept it boring. Subject: formal affidavit of identity theft and unauthorized financial activity. Account number ending in 4429. I took a sip of coffee. The bitterness grounded me. I began to write. I did not write like a daughter. I did not write like a woman who was hurt. I wrote like a machine. I wrote like the person North Harbor Compliance Group paid me to be. To the Fraud Investigation Unit, please accept this correspondence and the attached exhibits as a formal notification that the loan referenced above was opened fraudulently using my personal identifying information without my consent, knowledge, or authorization. I stopped. I thought about the dinner. I thought about Mom saying, "We are protecting the family name." I typed the next paragraph. I have not resided at the address listed on the application for 7 years. The email address associated with the account does not belong to me. The employment verification document submitted with the application is a forgery. As I have never been employed by Lakeview Crest Realty Partners in any capacity, I attach the files. Exhibit a copy of my actual driver's license and utility bills proving my residence. Exhibit B. Copy of my actual W-2 forms from North Harbor Compliance Group. Exhibit C. The forged employment letter on Lakeview Crest letterhead. Then, I went to the recipient field. I entered the email address for the bank's fraud department. Then I paused. If I sent this only to the bank, they would handle it internally. They would shut down the loan, go after Kendall, and that would be it. But Kendall had threatened me. She had threatened to destroy my career. She had threatened to lie to the world and say I was the one who begged for the money. If I wanted to survive this, I needed witnesses. I needed the truth to be on the record in more than one place. I opened a new tab on my browser. I searched for Lakeview Crest Realty Partners Corporate Compliance. I found it. A whistleblower hotline and a direct email for their legal department. I copied the email address. I pasted it into the CC field. I was not just reporting a bad loan. I was reporting an agent who was using the brokerage to commit felonies. I was handing Lakeview Crest the evidence they needed to clean their own house. I added one more email address, my personal attorney. A man I had retained that morning on Sarah's advice. The email was complete. It was a bullet. It was sleek, aerodynamic, and deadly. I looked at the clock. It was 2:00 in the afternoon. I could send it now. I could end it right now. But I remembered the training I had received in crisis management. Never execute a permanent decision in a state of high emotion. I was angry. My blood was humming with the adrenaline of the fight. If I sent it now, I might regret the tone. I might worry I had missed something. I needed to sleep on it. I needed to wake up, look at it one more time with fresh eyes, and press the button with a steady hand. I moved the cursor to the arrow next to the send button. Schedule send. A calendar popped up. Tomorrow, 8:00 a.m. I clicked it. The email vanished into the outbox. Scheduled. I closed the laptop. The sound of the lid snapping shut was the loudest thing I had heard all day. I sat there in the quiet house until the sun went down. I watched the light fade from the kitchen. I watched the shadows lengthen across the floor. When Miles came home, he found me sitting in the dark. He didn't turn on the lights. He just walked over and sat next to me. "Did you do it?" he asked. "I wrote it," I said. "It is scheduled for tomorrow morning." 8:00, he asked. 8:00? He nodded. He got up and poured us 2 glasses of water. He placed one in front of me. "Are you sure, Liv?" he asked. His voice was gentle, devoid of judgment. He was offering me one last exit ramp. "Once that email goes out, there is no taking it back. The bank will see the Lakeview documents. Your sister will lose her job. Your parents, they might never forgive you." I took a sip of water. It was cool and clean. "I know," I said. "They will say you ruined the family," Miles said. "They will say you did this out of spite." "I am not doing it to hurt them," I said. I turned to look at him, and I realized that for the first time in weeks, the knot in my stomach was gone. "I am not making them look bad. Miles, they did that themselves. I am just refusing to hide the body for them anymore. I am retiring from the cover-up business." Miles smiled. He reached out and touched my face. "I am proud of you." "I am terrified," I admitted. "That is how you know you are doing the right thing," he said. We made dinner. We ate in the living room, watching a mindless comedy show, trying to pretend that the world wasn't going to explode in 12 hours. And then, the phone started ringing. It started at 9 o'clock. It was Kendall. I looked at the screen. I didn't answer. 5 minutes later, it rang again. Mom. I flipped the phone over. Then a text came through. It buzzed against the coffee table. Kendall, we need to talk. I have a new idea. Just pick up. I didn't pick up. Another text. Kendall, don't do this. Liv, I am begging you. I can fix it. I turned the volume off. The screen lit up again and again. It was a strobe light of desperation. They knew. Somehow, they knew that the silence was different this time. They could feel the shift in the atmosphere. They could feel the control slipping away. At 11 o'clock, the landline rang. We hadn't used the landline in years. We only kept it for emergencies. Unplug it, Miles said. I walked over to the wall and pulled the cord. The ringing stopped mid-chirp. I went back to the bedroom. I plugged my cell phone into the charger on the nightstand. It lit up one last time before I turned off the lamp. Kendall. You are going to regret this. You should have stayed quiet. I looked at the message. The same words. The same command. You should have stayed quiet. I lay down in the dark. I listened to Miles breathing beside me. I listened to the wind outside. I closed my eyes. For 34 years, I had stayed quiet. I had swallowed my words. I had dimmed my light. I had let them edit my life. But tomorrow, at 8 o'clock, the silence would end. Tomorrow, the email would speak for me, and it would say everything I had never been brave enough to say to their faces. The dawn did not break. It shattered. I had barely slept, drifting in and out of a shallow, anxious doze where dreams of paperwork and prison bars mingled with the sound of my mother's voice. I woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning, not to the sound of an alarm, but to the relentless, vibrating buzz of my phone on the nightstand. It was dancing across the wood, a manic, mechanical seizure that told me the war had already begun. I reached for it, my eyes gritty, my heart already hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I expected angry texts. I expected missed calls. What I found was a public execution. I opened Instagram. Kendall had posted a story 3 hours ago, likely in the dead of night, fueled by wine and panic. It was a photo of her looking out a rainy window, artfully black and white, her silhouette tragic and small against the glass. The caption was a masterpiece of vague, weaponized victimhood. They say blood is thicker than water, but sometimes, the people who are supposed to hold you up are the ones who cut the safety net just to watch you fall. I am heartbroken to realize that jealousy can turn a sister into a stranger. I built my life from scratch, and it hurts when people who have never taken a risk try to tear down what they do not understand. Staying strong, focusing on the people who actually love me. She had not tagged me. She did not have to. The comments were already rolling in, a ticker tape of validation for her and judgment for the invisible enemy. Stay strong. Queen. Jealousy is a disease. Get well soon to them. Family can be so toxic. Cut them off. I sat up in bed, the cold blue light of the screen illuminating the room. She was spinning the narrative. She was preempting the explosion. By the time my email landed on the desk of the fraud investigators, she wanted the world to believe that I was a vindictive, unstable sibling who was attacking her out of spite. She was inoculating the jury before the trial even started. Then came the direct fire. A text from Mom popped up at 6:15. I saw Kendall's post. I hope you are happy. She is devastated. Olivia. She is sobbing. Do you really want to be the reason your sister has a breakdown? You are holding a match to this family. And for what? To prove a point. You can stop this. Just delete the email. Do not destroy us. I felt a wave of nausea. Mom did not ask if I was okay. She did not ask about the crime. She only cared about the noise. I went to the kitchen to make coffee, needing something to do with my hands. Miles was already up, sitting at the island, his laptop open. He looked at me, his face grim. Don't look at Facebook, he said gently. Why? Just don't. I looked anyway. Kendall had cross-posted to her personal page. The The comments there were from aunts, cousins, family friends, people who had known me since I was in diapers, sending prayers. Kendall. So sad when family turns on each other. I felt like I was standing in the center of a circle, watching people throw stones at a version of me that didn't exist. I wasn't the aggressor. I was the one with a $50,000 noose around my neck, but the truth was slow, and lies were fast. At 6:45, the strategy shifted. The stick was replaced by the carrot. My phone rang. It was Kendall. I let it go to voicemail. Immediately, a text appeared. "Pick up. I am not fighting. I have a proposal." I stared at the screen. My thumb hovered over the glass. I wanted to ignore her. I wanted to let the clock run down to 8 o'clock. But a small, terrified part of me, the part that still wanted to be a good sister, wondered if maybe she had woken up. Maybe she had realized the madness of it all. I typed back, "Text me. I am not talking." 3 dots pulsed. She was typing fast. "Okay, here's the deal. You sign the retro authorization. I take the loan. But I sign a separate contract with you, notarized by a lawyer of your choice, promising to pay you back in installments starting next month. And in exchange for you signing, I will fix this online. I will make a new post. I will say we worked it out. I will say you are the best sister in the world and that you saved the day. I will rebuild your image. Liv, I can make you look like a hero, or I can let you look like the villain. It is your choice." I read the message twice. It was a transaction. She was holding my reputation hostage and offering to sell it back to me in exchange for my compliance. She wasn't offering to pay the debt because it was her debt. She was offering to pay it as a favor. "And I will pay you an extra $2,000 cash today," she added. To show good faith. I looked at the coffee maker, watching the dark liquid drip into the pot. It was tempting. God, it was tempting. If I agreed, the war would stop, the notifications would stop, Mom would love me again. We would have Christmas dinner, and everyone would smile, and the secret would be buried under the floorboards, rotting quietly where no one could see it. I could go back to being the quiet one, the safe one. I was actually considering it. I was calculating the risk, wondering if I could draft a contract tight enough to bind her. And then, my email chimed. It was not a message from my family. It was an automated alert from the credit monitoring service I had signed up for the day before. Activity alert. Modification request detected. I frowned. I put down my mug and opened the app. A request had been submitted to the lender at 3 o'clock that morning. I clicked on the details. Request type contact information update. Change primary email address updated to KBU. realestatemane@gmail.com. Request type payment. Deferment application. I froze. At 3 in the morning, while Kendall was posting on Instagram about betrayal and heartbreak, she had logged into the loan portal using my credentials. She had changed the email address to cut me out of the loop again. And worse, she had applied for a payment deferment. She had told me at the coffee shop, and again at dinner, that she had the money. She said the commission checks were coming. She said she could pay it off in months. But here was the truth. Written in the digital logs of a high-interest lender, she was asking to skip the very first payment. She was broke. She didn't have the money. She didn't have the commissions. There was no bridge. The loan wasn't a stopgap. It was a desperate attempt to plug a hole in a sinking ship that was already underwater. If I signed her deal, if I agreed to take on this debt, she would default. It was a mathematical certainty. She would miss the first payment, and the second, and the third, and I would be left holding the bag, legally bound by my own signature, with no recourse because I had signed the authorization. The deal was a trap. It was not an olive branch. It was a landmine. I looked back at her text. "I will pay you back in installments." Lies. All of it. I felt a cold fury settle over me, displacing the anxiety. It was the clarity of the compliance officer taking over. I typed a reply. "I just got an alert. You tried to defer the payment at 3 a.m. You don't have the money. Kendall, there is no deal." I hit send. The reaction was instantaneous. The phone rang. I declined it. Then came the text. The mask didn't just slip. It shattered. You little bitch. I stared at the words. I know what you have to lose. Olivia. The next message read, You think you are so squeaky clean. I know about the mistake you made on the Henderson audit 3 years ago. I know you didn't flag that vendor until a week late. How would North Harbor like it if I sent an anonymous tip to their ethics board? How would they like to know their star compliance officer has a history of covering things up? I gasped. The Henderson audit. It was a minor error I had made early in my career. A simple oversight I had corrected immediately and self-reported, but I had told Kendall about it over wine one night, crying because I was stressed. I had trusted her with my vulnerability. Now, she was sharpening it into a shiv. And Miles, she continued, does Miles know that you still text your ex-boyfriend on his birthday? I can make things very messy for you. Liv, I can make your life a living hell. Or you can sign the paper and we go back to being a happy family. She was threatening my marriage. She was threatening my career. She was burning the earth to force me into submission. I looked at Miles. He was still typing, but he must have felt my distress because he stopped and turned to me. What is it? He asked. I handed him the phone. He read the texts. His face went hard. He read the threat about the audit. He read the threat about the ex-boyfriend, a harmless, platonic, happy birthday text that Miles knew about because I told him everything. Miles stood up. He walked around the island and took my hands. His grip was firm, grounding. She is drowning. Liv, he said, and she is trying to climb on top of your head to breathe. She is going to try to get me fired, I whispered. She is going to lie to everyone. Let her, Miles said. Let her lie. The truth is boring. Liv, the truth is documents and timestamps and IP addresses, and you have all of that. But Mom, your mom is protecting the investment, not the daughter, Miles said. It was harsh, but it was true. Liv, listen to me. If you sign that paper, you are telling them that it is okay to treat you like this. You are telling them that your safety has a price, and they can afford it. He looked me in the eye. I don't care about the money, he said. We can survive $50,000. We can pay it off if we have to. But I cannot survive watching you disappear again. I cannot watch you shrink yourself to fit into their box. Whatever happens at 8 o'clock, promise me one thing. What? Don't go back to being the one who bears it alone, he said. We are a team. If she attacks you, she attacks us. If she comes for your job, we fight. But we do it in the light. No more secrets. I nodded. Tears pricked my eyes. Okay. I took the phone back. I opened the email app on my laptop. It was 7:55. The email was there in the scheduled folder. Subject formal affidavit of identity theft. All I had to do was nothing. If I sat here and drank my coffee, the email would go. The nuclear launch sequence was already initiated, but my finger shook. The threats were real. Kendall could cause damage. She could make my work life difficult. She could embarrass me. She could fracture the family permanently. There would be no coming back from this. No more Christmases. No more birthdays. I would be an orphan with living parents. 7:56. My phone buzzed again. Mom, Olivia. Please, pick up the phone. Dad is having chest pains. Do you want to kill him? A low blow, the lowest. Using Gordon's health, which was perfectly fine yesterday at the steakhouse, as a weapon, I hovered the mouse over the cancel send button. It would be so easy to stop it. Just one click, click, and the pressure vanishes. Click, and I sign the paper. Click, and I buy the piece. Liv, Miles said softly. He wasn't telling me what to do. He was just witnessing me. I looked at the screen. I looked at the text from Mom. I looked at the threat from Kendall. You should have stayed quiet. I realized then that silence wasn't peace. Silence was the soil where their corruption grew. 7:58. I looked at the cancel button. I remembered the fake email address. I remembered the deferred payment request. I remembered the loan application with the forged Lakeview Crest letterhead. They weren't afraid of me ruining the family. The family was already ruined. They were afraid of the inspection. I took my hand off the mouse. I clasped my hands together in my lap. I watched the clock. 7:59. The longest minute of my life. My phone rang again. Kendall. I let it ring. I watched the seconds tick down. 55, 56, 57. I didn't click cancel. I let the email send. 7:40 in the morning. The countdown had moved from hours to minutes, and the atmosphere in my small kitchen had shifted from anxious to funereal. The sun was fully up now, a pale, indifferent light washing over the countertops, exposing the dust motes dancing in the air. I sat on a stool, my spine rigid, my hands wrapped around a ceramic mug that had gone cold 20 minutes ago. My phone, lying face down on the granite, began to buzz. It was not a notification. It was a call. I knew who it was without turning it over. It was the specific, frantic vibration of a woman who realized she had lost control of the script. I let it ring 3 times. Then, against my better judgment, against Miles's silent advice from across the room, I picked it up. "Hello?" I said. "Olivia." It was my mother. But the voice was wrong. The imperious command and control tone from the steakhouse was gone. The icy disappointment of the last few weeks had evaporated. In its place was a raw, trembling panic that sounded terrifyingly small. "I am listening, Mom," I said. "Please," she whispered. "Please, honey, I am asking you, I am begging you, do not send it." "It is scheduled, Mom," I said. "It goes at 8 o'clock. "I will talk to her," she said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I promise, Olivia. I will make her pay it. I will force her to sell the car. I will make Gordon liquidate his bonds. We will get the money. You will not have to pay a dime. Just cancel the email. Give us 24 hours. "You had 3 weeks," I said. "You had a dinner. You had a coffee meeting. You didn't use that time to fix it. You used it to try and bury me." "We were scared," she cried. "We were trying to protect the family." "I am the family, too," I said. "Aren't I?" There was a silence on the other end. A long, heavy silence, where the truth usually lived. "You are," Mom said, her voice cracking. "Of course you are. That is why you have to do this. You are the strong one. Liv, you have always been the strong one. Your sister is weak. If you do this, if you expose her like this, she will not survive it. She will shatter. She committed a felony, Mom. She made a mistake." Mom screamed, the panic spiking into anger. "Why do you have to be so black and white? Why do you have to be so cruel?" "I am not being cruel," I said. "I am being honest, and I am tired of being the only one." "If you send that email," Mom said, her voice dropping to a low, desperate hiss, "if you send the police to my door, I will never forgive you. Do you hear me? You will break my heart, and my heart cannot take it. You know my blood pressure. You know what the doctor said." She was doing it. She was playing the final card, the mortality card. "Are you threatening me with your own death?" "Mom," I asked. "I am telling you the consequences." She wept. "I am telling you that if you destroy this family, the stress will kill me, and you will have to live with that." I looked at Miles. He was watching me, his jaw set, his eyes fierce. He shook his head slightly. "Don't take the bait." "I love you, Mom," I said. "But I am not responsible for your heart. And I am not responsible for Kendall's crimes." I hung up. My hand was shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. The guilt was instant, a chemical flush of cortisol that made my stomach turn. I had been trained for 34 years to prevent that sound, the sound of my mother crying. I had been conditioned like a dog to flinch at her distress. Then the phone buzzed again. A text message. From Kendall. It popped up on the lock screen. The time was 7:45. "You should have stayed quiet." I stared at the words, the title of my life, the instruction manual I had been given at birth. Then a second bubble appeared. "If that email goes out, do not expect to have a mother by noon. You know how fragile she is. If she has a stroke because of this, it is on you. You are killing her. Olivia, is your precious credit score worth Mom's life?" I felt the air leave the room. It was monstrous. It was a level of manipulation that bordered on psychological warfare. She was using our mother's health as a human shield. She was holding a gun to Mom's head and telling me I was the one pulling the trigger. I put the phone down on the counter. I looked around my kitchen. I looked at the scuff mark on the floor where we had dragged the refrigerator in 2 years ago. I looked at the slightly crooked cabinet door that Miles kept promising to fix. I looked at the sunlight hitting the cheap laminate table where we ate our dinners. This house was small. It was imperfect. It was nothing compared to Kendall's vaulted ceilings and marble islands. But it was quiet here. It was a quiet that I had built. It was a peace that didn't require me to lie. It was a sanctuary where I didn't have to pretend to be anything other than who I was, for my entire life. I had believed that love was an act of endurance. I thought that being a good daughter meant swallowing the insults, absorbing the shocks, and smoothing over the cracks so nobody else had to see them. I thought that if I just stayed quiet enough, if I just made myself small enough, eventually they would see me. Eventually, they would say, "Thank you, Olivia. Thank you for carrying the weight." But they never did. They just added more weight. Because to them, I wasn't a person. I was a utility. I was a load-bearing wall that they could drill into whenever they needed to hang a new picture of themselves. I looked at the clock. 7:50, 10 minutes. I could stop it. I could pick up the phone, call Mom back, and say, "Okay, I will sign. I will take the debt. Just stop crying." If I did that, the phone calls would stop. The threats would stop. Kendall would post a picture of us on Instagram with the caption, "Sisters forever." Mom would sleep tonight, but the loan would remain, the lie would remain, and I would spend the next 10 years paying for a house I didn't own, for a lifestyle I didn't live, for a sister who despised me. I would be buying their love with my life. And I realized, standing there in the sunbeam, that it was too expensive. I walked over to the laptop. The screen was dark. I tapped the spacebar. The image flared to life. The email client was open. The scheduled folder had a little number 1 next to it. I clicked on the folder. There it was. Subject formal affidavit. Scheduled for 8 o'clock. I opened the email one last time. I read the words. They were cold. They were clinical. They were the truth. I, Olivia Wallace, formally attest that I did not authorize. It wasn't an attack. It wasn't a weapon. It was a boundary. A boundary is not a wall you build to keep people out. It is a line you draw to show people where you end and they begin. And for the first time, I was drawing it in permanent ink. 7:55. Miles walked over to me. He stood behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. He rested his chin on my shoulder. He looked at the screen. "You okay?" he asked. "No," I said. "I feel sick." "That is the withdrawal," he said. "Leaving a toxic system is like detoxing. Your body thinks it needs the poison to survive because that is all it has ever known." I leaned back into him. He was solid. He was real. "Do you think she will really—" I couldn't finish the sentence about Mom. "Your mother is a survivor," Miles said. "She uses her fragility as a sword. She will be fine. She will be angry. She will be dramatic. But she will be fine. And if she isn't, that is not your fault. Liv, you are not God." 7:57. My phone buzzed again, a rapid-fire series of vibrations that rattled against the stone. I looked. Kendall again. "Answer me, where are you?" "You are a coward." Then, at 7:58, one final message. "Who do you think you are?" I stared at the question. It was meant to be an insult. It was meant to remind me of my place. Who do you think you are to challenge me? Who do you think you are to speak up? But in the silence of my kitchen, the question felt different. It felt like an invitation. Who do you think you are? Olivia. Are you the little sister? Are you the doormat? Are you the background character? Or are you the woman who passed the certification exam on the first try? Are you the woman who bought her own house? Are you the woman who stands up for the law every single day at work? Because she believes that rules exist to protect people from bullies? I picked up the phone. I didn't unlock it. I just looked at my reflection in the black glass. I put it face down. I walked back to the coffee pot. I poured the cold coffee down the sink. It splashed against the stainless steel. Dark and muddy. I rinsed the mug. I dried it. I poured a fresh cup. The steam rose up, smelling of roast and morning. 7:59. I sat down on the stool. I sat up straight. I pulled my shoulders back. I uncrossed my legs and planted my feet flat on the floor. I looked at the laptop screen. The seconds were ticking away on the digital clock in the corner of the taskbar. 47. I didn't touch the mouse. I didn't hover over the cancel button. I folded my hands on the countertop and simply watched. I was witnessing the death of a lie. I was watching the burning of the script. It was terrifying. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, watching the ground crumble beneath my feet. But I also felt lighter. The heavy, suffocating blanket of potential and image was slipping off my shoulders. 57. My phone buzzed again, long, persistent, a call. I didn't look. Got to 59. I took a breath, a deep, full breath that filled my lungs completely. The numbers clicked over, 8 o'clock, on the screen. The email in the scheduled folder blinked once, then, with a casual, almost anticlimactic speed, it vanished. The folder said empty. A notification popped up in the corner message sent. It was done. The documents were gone. The affidavit, the IP logs, the forged letterhead, the recordings they were flying through the digital ether, landing in inboxes that could not be unread, on servers that could not be scrubbed. The secret was out. The silence was broken. I let out the breath I had been holding, and in that exact second, the silence of the kitchen was shattered. My phone began to ring. It was a loud, jarring sound, echoing off the walls. I looked at the screen. It wasn't Mom. It wasn't Kendall. It was a local number. I picked it up. Hello? Is this Olivia Wallace? A male voice asked. It was professional, crisp, and serious. Yes, I said. This is Detective Miller with the Columbus Division of Police, Fraud Unit, the voice said. We just received a priority referral from the bank's security division regarding an ongoing identity theft case. I have some documents here that were just forwarded to my desk. Do you have a moment to talk? I looked at Miles. He nodded. I looked at the empty scheduled folder. Yes, Detective, I said. I have time. The moment I hung up with Detective Miller, the world did not stop spinning, but for the first time in my life, it began to spin in the correct direction. The fallout was not an explosion, it was a landslide. It started slow, with the grinding of gears in offices I would never see, and then it accelerated into a force that buried the lies my family had constructed under tons of bureaucratic rock. By 10 o'clock that morning, the machinery of consequence was fully operational. I spent the next 3 hours on the phone, not with my mother, who was leaving voicemails that ranged from sobbing incoherent pleas to cold, hard rage. Not with Kendall, whose silence was now deafening. I was on the phone with the fraud department of the bank. Once the affidavit was filed, the dynamic changed instantly. I was no longer the stubborn sister refusing to help. I was the cooperating witness in a federal inquiry. The bank moved with terrifying efficiency. They froze the loan account immediately. They flagged the disbursement because the funds had been transferred to a business account controlled by Kendall. They initiated a clawback protocol. We have locked the funds, the fraud specialist told me. The recipient account has been frozen pending the investigation. You are not liable for this debt. Ms. Wallace, we have already sent a correction notice to the credit bureaus. Your score should reflect the removal of the trade line within 48 to 72 hours. Just like that, a few keystrokes, a sworn statement, and the $50,000 weight was lifted off my chest. But while the bank was cleaning up the numbers, Lakeview Crest Realty was cleaning up the personnel. I learned later what happened at the brokerage. I had carbon copied their compliance officer, a man named Mr. Henderson, on my morning email. I had attached the forged employment letter on their letterhead. At 11:30, while Kendall was likely trying to figure out why her bank cards were being declined at Starbucks, security walked into her office in Upper Arlington. They did not ask her for an explanation. In the corporate world, when you use company assets to commit fraud, there is no conversation. There is only risk mitigation. They seized her laptop. They seized her company phone. They escorted her out of the building in front of her colleagues, her clients, and the assistant she had likely bullied into notarizing that document. Mr. Henderson called me at noon. "Ms. Wallace?" he said, his voice clipped and professional. "We have received your documentation. We are conducting an immediate internal audit. The employment verification letter you submitted was not generated by our HR department. It appears to be a fabrication created on a personal device connected to our network. We are cooperating fully with the police investigation. The individual in question has been terminated effective immediately for gross misconduct in violation of our ethics charter." Terminated. The word hung in the air. Kendall's career, the one she had built on smoke and mirrors, was gone. Not because I was jealous, not because I was spiteful, but because she had typed a lie on the wrong stationery. But the real shock, the twist that turned my stomach and finally killed the last lingering calm of guilt I felt, came at 2:00 in the afternoon. Detective Miller called me back. "Ms. Wallace," he said, "I wanted to update you. We have pulled the suspect's financial history to trace the origin of the identity data. In doing so, we found something else." "What?" I asked, gripping the edge of my desk. "This is not the first time this social security number has been used, nor is it the only identity associated with these IP addresses," he said. "We found 3 other loan applications over the last 4 years. Smaller amounts, 5,000 here, 10,000 there, all paid off eventually, but all opened under different names." I frowned. "Different names?" "One was in the name of a Gordon Vance," the detective said, "and 2 were in the name of a Carolyn Wallace." I froze. "My parents?" "It appears so," Miller said. "It looks like the suspect has a habit of using family members' identities to secure short-term financing when her cash flow is tight. She cycles the debt. She pays off one fraudulent loan with the proceeds from the next. It is a classic Ponzi structure, just kept within the household." I dropped the phone to my lap. Kendall hadn't just stolen from me. She had been stealing from them for years. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Gordon and Mom weren't just protecting Kendall from this one mistake. They were protecting a system. They knew. They had to know. You do not have loans taken out in your name and paid off without noticing the mail. The inquiries, the credit score fluctuations, they had allowed it. They had normalized it. They had taught her that her family was nothing more than a credit line to be harvested. And when she finally aimed her weapon at me, their panic wasn't about the crime. It was about the fact that I was the only one who hadn't agreed to be a victim. I drove to my parents' house at 5:00. I didn't call first. I just went. The driveway was full. Kendall's Mercedes was there, parked crookedly. Gordon's sedan was there. I walked to the front door. I didn't knock. I used the key I had carried on my keychain for 15 years, the key to a house that had never really felt like home. I walked into the living room. It was a tableau of ruin. Mom was sitting on the white sofa, clutching a tissue, her eyes swollen almost shut. Gordon was pacing by the fireplace, a glass of scotch in his hand, looking older than I had ever seen him. And Kendall was standing in the middle of the room. She was still wearing the clothes she had been fired in. Her mascara was running down her face in black streaks. She looked wild, cornered, and dangerous. When I walked in, the room went silent. Kendall spun around. Her eyes locked on mine, and for a second, I thought she was going to attack me. "You," she hissed. "Me," I said. I stood by the door, keeping my distance. "I heard you lost your job." "I lost everything," she screamed. The sound tore through the polite silence of the suburbs. "They walked me out. Olivia, they took my license. The board is opening an investigation. I will never sell real estate in this state again. Are you happy? Is this what you wanted?" "I didn't do that," I said, my voice steady. "You did that. You typed the letter, you forged the signature, you sent the email." "I did it for us," she wailed. She turned to Mom, falling to her knees in front of the sofa. "Mom, tell her, Tell her I was just trying to fix things. I was going to pay it back. I always pay it back. Mom looked down at Kendall, but she didn't reach out to touch her hair. She didn't coo or comfort. She looked at her golden child with a strange, hollow expression. She knows. Kendall, Mom whispered. Kendall froze. What? The detective called, Gordon said. His voice was rough, like gravel. He stopped pacing and looked at me. He asked about the loans in my name from 2021. He asked about the remodeling loan Mom supposedly took out last year. Gordon looked at me, and for the first time, I saw shame in his eyes. We told him it was a mistake, Gordon said. We told him we authorized them. We tried to cover for you again, Kendall, but he has the IP logs. He knows you logged in as us. So you were all in on it, I said. It wasn't a question. We didn't know about your loan until last week, Mom said, her voice trembling. We knew she had borrowed from us before. We let it slide. We thought she is just ambitious. She just needs a leg up. We didn't think she would go after you. But when she did, I said, you helped her hide it. We were trying to keep the family together. Mom cried. What were we supposed to do? Send our daughter to jail? Yes, I said. If she is a criminal, yes. You are heartless. Kendall spat from the floor. She stood up, wiping her face. The vulnerability was gone, replaced by pure venom. You think you are so perfect with your little rules and your little compliance job. You are just jealous that I actually tried to be someone. You are jealous that I have vision. I have vision too, I said. I see you. Kendall, finally, I see exactly what you are. You ruined me, she said, stepping toward me. You took my life away. No, I said. I didn't step back. I looked her in the eye. I just stopped paying for it. She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing, grasping for a weapon that wasn't there anymore. She couldn't threaten my job. She couldn't threaten my reputation. She couldn't threaten to tell Mom, because Mom was sitting right there, broken by the truth. The power dynamic in the room shifted. The gravity that had always pulled everything toward Kendall reversed. I looked at Gordon. You helped her with the application, I said. You are going to have to explain that to the police. They are going to ask why a retired accountant was helping to falsify income documents. Gordon looked away. I will handle my own affairs. I am sure you will, I said. I looked at Mom. She looked small. The matriarch who had ruled with guilt and expectations was gone. All that was left was an old woman who had bet everything on the wrong daughter. You knew, I said to her. You knew she was a fraud. And you let me think I was the failure because I wasn't rich like her. You let me feel small because I didn't have her flash, but her flash was stolen. Mom, and you knew. Mom put her face in her hands and began to weep. It wasn't the manipulative crying of the phone call. It was the sound of a woman mourning her own vanity. I am leaving, I said. Olivia, Mom said, looking up. Where are you going? Home, I said. To my house. But we need to figure this out, she said. The police, the lawyers, we need a strategy. No, I said. You need a strategy. I have the truth. That is all I need. I turned around. I walked out the door. Kendall shouted something after me. Something about how I would regret this. How I would be alone. I didn't stop. I didn't turn back. I walked to my car. The air outside was crisp and cold. The leaves were turning orange and red, falling from the trees. I got in the car and drove. I didn't drive fast. I drove the speed limit. I stopped at every stop sign. I signaled every turn. I pulled into my driveway. The lights were on in the kitchen. I could see Miles moving around inside. He was making dinner. I walked inside. The house smelled of garlic and roasting chicken. It smelled like reality. Hey, Miles said. He turned around, holding a wooden spoon. He looked at my face, searching for damage. How was it? It is over, I said. Did they? He hesitated. Are they okay? No, I said. They are not okay. Kendall is going to be charged. Gordon is going to be questioned. Mom is realizing that the story she told herself about our family was a lie. And you, Miles asked, are you okay? I put my keys in the bowl by the door. I took off my coat. I felt lighter than I had felt in 20 years. I am, I said, and I meant it. My phone was in my pocket. I took it out. I looked at the screen. There were no new messages. The silence was absolute. I turned the phone off. I placed it in the drawer of the entry table and closed it. I am hungry, I said. Miles smiled. He poured 2 glasses of wine. We sat down at our small laminate table. The plates didn't match. The napkins were paper. There was no chandelier, no expensive centerpiece, no performance. I took a bite of the chicken. It was perfect. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. I wasn't waiting for the criticism. I wasn't waiting for the bill. I had paid my dues. I had cleared my ledger. And as I looked across the table at the man who loved me not for what I could give him, but for who I was, I realized something. Kendall was right about one thing. I should have stayed quiet, but not to protect them. I should have stayed quiet because they didn't deserve my words. They didn't deserve my energy. They didn't deserve my noise. But now, the silence was mine, and it was beautiful. Thank you so much for listening to this story. It was a wild ride through the dark side of family loyalty, and I hope it reminded you that your peace is worth more than their approval. Please comment below and let me know where you are listening from. I love seeing our community grow from all corners of the world. If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to the Maya Revenge Stories channel. Hit that like button to support the work, and smash the hype button so this story can reach even more people who might need to hear it. Stay strong, and see you in the next one.